on the plain of the River Arno, Florence was growing day by day. But here in the Mugello Hills, time passed more slowly. The skein of life unwound patiently, like the twisting paths that scale the Apennines from Tuscany towards Emilia. Here all followed the simple tempo of nature, the rhythm of the countryside, and those who work the fields. Around 1275, Bondoni's son, a peasant child from Colle di Vespignano, was watching his small flock graze. To while away the hours, he drew pictures of his sheep on the flat, scattered rocks in the fields. Master Cimabue, the most famous artist of the time, noticed the shepherd boy's drawings while on a trip to Bologna, and was immediately struck by their artistry. And so began the legend, half fable and half recorded fact, of an artist who was to revolutionize the course of painting, but whose real name remains a mystery. Replying to Cimabue, the shepherd boy used only his surname. "My name's Giotto." Giotto was born in 1267, almost a contemporary of Dante. Like the famous poet, Giotto had known the lively city of Bologna since he was a young man. In the 13th century, it was one of Europe's most important cultural centers. In fact, Cimabue has painted a sumptuous altarpiece of the Madonna enthroned in the church of Santa Maria dei Servi in Bologna. And after returning to Florence, he guided the first steps of his exceptionally gifted pupil. Cimabue and Giotto worked side by side, even painting some works together, and the simple, solemn organization of Cimabue's paintings remained a fundamental influence on the development of Giotto's style. The young Giotto concentrated above all on two subjects, and they were to retain their importance throughout his career: the Madonna and Child for the Church of San Giorgio alla Costa, and a large crucifixion on wood for the Dominican Basilica of Santa Maria Novella. In one great leap forward, the anatomy of the figure of Christ, taken from life, surpassed the forms of Byzantine convention. As the 13th century drew to a close, the most important artist's workshop in Italy and the cradle of stylistic innovation in painting was no longer Bologna, Florence, or Rome. Instead, the Basilica of St. Francis in Assisi became the crucible of the new art. St. Francis had died in 1226. Almost immediately, a magnificent church began to rise around his tomb. The first stage, a little after 1230, was the robust and powerful lower church. Then the radiant upper church was consecrated in 1253. In contrast with the somber silence of the lower basilica, the spatial rhythm of the new church was determined by the simple progression of four large spans along a single broad nave. Around 1280, Cimabue began the decoration of the transepts, at times moving to the upper church. Oxidization of the colors has badly compromised the conservation of the frescoes, yet they still glow with all the power and drama of the master's style. Indeed, they represent the highest point of the evolution of Byzantine art in Italy. The arrangement of the figures, the poses, the gestures, and the features obey rules enshrined in tradition. But Cimabue also suffused these pictures with new meaning. His figures are charged with a terrible energy, bringing them to the brink of the abyss in the final conflict between good and evil, leaving mind and soul in turmoil. Cimabue also painted a more placid Madonna and saints in the lower church, which is famous for its fragile and moving image of St. Francis. Sometime around 1285, while keeping overall control of the work, Cimabue gave freer rein to his collaborators, who were joined by other master painters from Rome. Scenes from classical legends and New Testament stories began to take shape along the upper sections of the nave. The young Giotto, now aged 20, also took part in this great project. He was now ready for the stories of St. Francis. Recent interpretations have cast doubt on Giotto's contribution to the great stories of the saint, painted during the last decade of the 13th century. Nevertheless, it is certain that these frescoes marked the dawning of a new age, not only in art, but also for European culture in general. And so modern humanity began to take shape on the walls of Assisi at the height of medieval times. In contrast to the work depicting evangelical stories, here Giotto had the opportunity to create completely new episodes, situations, and characters, inspired by recent and familiar events. And the painter truly identified with the essence and heart of the Franciscan example, transforming these emotions into a fresh, simple reality. So Giotto made his way down to Assisi's town square to study the remains of the Roman temple dedicated to Minerva. He later used it as a setting for the homage of a simple man as he laid out his cloak in front of the young St. Francis in a moving arrangement of gestures and expressions. The city walls and the surrounding countryside lead back to the sharply defined scene of the gift of the cloak to a poor man, and serve as eloquent proof of the strictly linear compositional logic at work. The lines flowing down from the mountains converge towards the head of Francis, as if to guide the eye of the onlooker towards the fulcrum of the action. It is not difficult to imagine Giotto enchanted by the Umbrian hills as he walked towards the San Damiano monastery, reliving the wonder of the saint's mystical vision and kneeling before the image of the crucifix amidst the crumbling walls of the dilapidated and abandoned church. And again, here are the sturdily paved streets of Assisi, winding between the stone facades, houses, streets, and walls that are transformed into the backdrop of the famous renunciation of worldly goods, with St. Francis shedding all his garments before the horrified priest. The bishop intervenes to cover, partly at least, the wiry yet athletic form of the saint, proof of how Giotto sees through to the true human anatomy and refuses to be content with the traditional Byzantine physical forms. The scene depicts the turning point in the life of St. Francis. From this moment on, he abandoned